bigger meaning to what we do as lean practitioners. And even in a work environment, the things that we do make people happier. They don't have to deal with the same stuff that they've always had to deal with.
As hard as getting started with lean is, I think most would agree that sustaining improvements may be just as difficult. This is why I'm so excited for today's show, since our guest today explains how he goes about this important aspect of change management. His name is Brian DeVries. Now, as you hear, Brian has a diverse background across several different industries, and he currently works for a company called Zeeland Services. On today's show, Brian and I talk about how change sustainment issues are often the result of a buy-in problem at the very start. We also explore the importance of showing empathy within the change process. Now, show notes for this episode, which will include links to everything Brian and I discuss, can be found over at gembapodcast.com. Just look for episode 222. You can also check out Gemba Academy's Lean Learning System over at gembaacademy.com with a fully functional trial. Now, let's get to the show. Welcome to the show, Brian. How's it going?
Well, so far so good. I appreciate you having me. It's exciting to be a part of a show that served me well in advancing my career and learnings, and being a part of a show with some really great lean minds. So appreciate you having me.
Well, yeah. Thank you, and you're welcome. So how long have you been listening to the podcast?
It's been, I can remember some of the earlier episodes. I can't remember even some of the numbers, but I know we're talking when they're kind of double-digit numbers. So,
yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love doing this podcast. It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. I can tell a lot of people appreciate it. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, let's kind of begin at the start. Brian, tell us a little bit about your background, how you first came to learn about continuous improvement, and then what you're up to these days.
Sure. So originally, I spent about 10 years in the golf course maintenance industry. So before I got into lean and continuous improvement, I spent some time in the golf maintenance industry, so taking care of the grounds of golf courses, and actually went to school at Michigan State University for that, and moved around the country a little bit, and finally got back closer to home here. And I live in Michigan now, and so does my wife. She was originally from Michigan as well. So got back closer to home and kind of realized, my passion for that really wasn't there. And so wanted to try to find something a little bit different to get into, and it kind of suited my personality and the things that I like to do. And decided to go back to school and get an MBA and kind of try to figure it out. And I took a job as a manufacturing supervisor at a local office furniture manufacturer. And from there, when I first started, was placed on a lean quality team and really focused much more on lean. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my initial, introduction to it, and got exposed to some projects. And, my 2 weeks that I was supposed to spend on this team turned into about 7 months before they finally said, let's get him out on the floor for what he's hired to do. And it took a lot of those learnings and those tools, and was able to actually apply them to the couple different areas that I worked there. And we really, I always say we really changed the way we did business, and just the engagement level of the people. And so from there, I just, seeing that energy and that transformation, wanted to try to find a way to really do it more full time than what I had there. And it was a great learning for me, and took an opportunity with Hayworth, also office furniture manufacturing, and was neat because I got to be part of their global team and travel the world and do lean assessments and help talk about strategy, and just a neat position. And then from there, changed industries into the kind of the food and agriculture industries. What led me here to Zeeland, and Zeeland Farm Services is where I'm at now, and just leading the organization here. We're brand new to it, so it's a unique position. It's a great opportunity for us, and but it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a really quick journey, but it's been a lot of fun as well. So I finally found that passion, something I really didn't have way back, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And the energy is there. I love continuous improvement, everything that it's about.
Mm-hmm. So what is, tell us about Zeeland Farm Services. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a company. It's a family-owned company, been around since 1950. I've been here actually just over a year now with this organization, and they do kind kind of just a plethora of different things. Matter of fact, it's probably taken me all this time to figure out everything we do, to be quite honest. But we do soybean processing, corn processing, ethanol fuels. We have a green power division where we work with our local landfill to convert some of their methane gas to energy for our operation. We just purchased a plant in Iowa that does soy flour. We do edible oils, so vegetable oils, different things like that. We have an export business, a freight division. There's a lot of different arms to our organization, and it continues to grow with the purchase in Iowa recently. And we got a new plant that'll be starting up here within another 6 months or so here in Michigan. So some really neat things, a lot of growth, an exciting time for the organization.
And how old is the company?
They've been around since 1950.
50. Yeah, that's what you said. Okay. And okay, so, well, I think really the nature of today's episode is going to be on kind of change and sustaining and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, talk a little bit about Zeeland's lean journey. Like, how did it get started and where would you say it's at today?
Yeah, sure. So about a year ago or so, I saw the opening, to be honest with you, and applied for it and started to kind of learn the story after taking the position. So really what happened is that the organization is at a point now where there's enough growth where there's a realization that the processes, the things that we do today, whether it's in the processing piece of it or whether it's here in the support functions, is the stuff we do today really just, it's not going to work as we move forward. It'll be much more difficult to handle that type of volume moving forward. So really it came out of a couple of different things. One, we're updating our computer system, our whole business operating system, our software. So we wanted to take a look at, from a process standpoint, what are the things we're doing today we can do a little bit better, and also identify opportunities as we implement the new software to be able to, work with that company to kind of tailor some of the things to us to help us in our processes as well. So it's kind of a mixed role, a mixed bag, but it really came out of this thought of we're growing. The things we're doing today are going to be a lot more difficult as we continue to grow. So some changes have to happen. So, and that's where I enter in. It's an organization that's brand new, blank slate, hadn't done anything as far as lean or continuous improvement to this point. So really neat.
Well, as Stephen Covey says, we kind of begin with the end in mind, right? And
right.
So I guess if you're at the beginning of a journey, I think it's interesting that we talk about sustainment when you haven't even done it yet. But I think if you don't think about it at the beginning, it's probably going to be difficult to do at the end, right?
Agreed. Yes, agreed.
So let's dive into that topic, because obviously you've got a lot of experience even before Zeeland, where I'm sure you've practiced many of these things. But
for sure.
But talk about why do we struggle as organizations with sustainment, maintaining the gains, whatever you want to call it? What is that, and why is it always a constant battle?
Yeah, it's something that even when I first started here, kind of getting the lay of the land, interviewing folks, getting around, talking to different business functions. You hear that even here in a growing organization. There's some of this, we've done a great job in the past of finding some improvements. We've done some good work of making some improvements, but it came back to sustainment and how, really just unable to maintain these improvements, kept falling back to kind of the way things had always been done. And even I'm actually an elected member of the Michigan Lean Consortium, a statewide lean networking organization. And being a part of that organization, you get to see a lot of feedback from our events and things that others struggle with. And that seems to be one of the big, the common themes, if you will, is just how do I sustain my gains? And even in the same breath, quite often you hear, how do I get the buy-in? And a lot of that kind of really started to trigger a lot of what we experiment with here and what I've experimented with in the past of just, doing the work up front to maintain that, to get the buy-in, to help with that momentum. And I find a lot as we move forward, if we're doing upfront work, getting that buy-in, building the business case, building that dissatisfaction, that has really seemed to be a very, very helpful. And follow really it's just a simple recipe, as we're calling just the recipe for success for buy-in. And we just look at it for three elements. One, we need to create that need for change. Some of that's understood. The other piece of it is some of it needs to be created. Getting folks to see and have a dissatisfaction with today is not always easy. We have a great ability as human beings to be able to adapt to our surroundings, to our environment, and we become blind to opportunities that are out there to make things better. So some of that comes down to just the way you use empathy, the way you use just kind of your own self and understanding who you are, and some of the potential biases you bring as a CI or lean practitioner, and how to keep those things in the forefront as you're engaging with different folks, and then also creating this environment where the improvement is done by them, not to them. You could sit in a room full of people and you can ask how many people have ever experienced that, and a lot of hands will go up. And so I think that's a well-known fact. The same thing with all levels of the organization. You hear quite often it's top down or needs to be bottom up, and I think both are right. And we've done some of that here. We've taken a value stream at all levels of the organization, a full cross section of a value stream, all the way to our customers and our vendors, and are really kind of building that model value stream using kind of this upfront work of buy-in and this dissatisfaction with the way things are today, and building that case. So I think there's a lot to be said for those elements.
Mm-hmm. So like I'm famous for taking notes while I'm interviewing. I'm supposed to be focused on interviewing, but I'm too busy typing notes for my own selfish learning desires. Yeah. So you said that there were three things, and the first one I picked up on was that you needed to create the need for change.
Yep.
So was the second, then I was trying to figure out the second one. Was it you had to create it sometimes, or what was this? What are the first, second, and third things that you talked about there?
Sure. Yeah, the first piece of it is exactly that, creating that need for change, the dissatisfaction of today, and utilizing true empathy, self-awareness, those approaches, and we can talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
The second element is the improvement needs to be done by them, not to them. So it's taking that next step. They understand the need for change. Now they get to initiate that change. And then thirdly is all levels of the organization have to be involved, have to be bought into this to make sure that it's going to be successful in the long run, because we do hear that top down or bottom up, and I think both are correct. All levels of the organization at a certain point have to be involved at a certain level.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so three things for all you note takers out there. Don't be taking notes if you're driving in a car, though.
That's right. Yeah.
Wait till you get back, or we'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
You got to have a need for change, improvement done by them, not to them, and all levels have to be bought in. It's kind of funny. We're actually going through an interviewing process right now for a position here at Gamba Academy, and part of the interview is we asked them to kind of teach us back. Some topic. And today, one of the guys got up and kind of talked about change management. And it's funny, he had a similar thing. And he's exactly like this. Start with what it is and why, and then do some training. And he had a cool acronym. I can't remember now, but but it was basically this. So yeah,
That's great.
Really good
That's
stuff.
Good to hear.
Really good stuff. So let's talk a little bit more about those empathy tools and techniques. I think that's really interesting, and probably something that we lean folks, don't get into enough. So talk a little bit about what is it, and maybe how has it helped your team?
Yeah, for sure. So really what sparked my interest in kind of the empathetic part of improvement, I think some of it really is intrinsic to the process itself. What you do is you're naturally putting yourself out there and showing vulnerability, and some of that's kind of baked into the process. But really what I loved was I had an opportunity early on in my CI journey to be a part of a design thinking workshop, and empathy is really called out as its own step, it's explicit that this is part of the process. And I found that very interesting. And ever since the couple of those workshops I've had a chance to be a part of, that's been a big part of CI for me, and lean, and for me is just. And I think really the reason why initial success has been there is because of being able to call out, really truly understanding it's more than just bringing even an operator or somebody in the office, bringing them into an office and talking to them, but it's really going out and immersing yourself in the work and understanding it. And I think that can be done at all levels of the organization, whether you're at the top of the organization, setting your vision, your direction, having those real strategic talks, really getting in and understanding what leaders want the business to be, or what the real true direction is, all the way down to that grassroots level where potentially it's a local CI person, or it's ultimately it's somebody on the floor, it's a mid-level leader, that they're able to go in and really just understand and immerse themselves within the work, because you find so many different things when you're out there in the environment. And some of that's in our Gemba walk and in the process that we might use here. Some of that's within interviewing and shadowing techniques and the notes that you might take and the things you might take notice of. But when you're really out there in the work, you really begin to understand and see things that you don't see in an office when you're just talking to somebody or mapping out a process. So I think it's to go out and really get that initial understanding, whether it's the beginning of a Kaizen event, going out and doing that, or just the day-to-day. I think that stuff is extremely important.
What does empathy mean to you? Like, really, as a lean thinker? Mm-hmm. Like, what? Yeah. I mean, there's so many. You could Google it or whatever, but like, what do you think it means?
That's an awesome question. For me, I want to be in their shoes. I want to know what it's like. I think often back to some of my times as a supervisor on a manufacturing floor, and being able to spend 10 minutes a night with my operator. I've worked second shift mostly. It's taken 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week with an operator to just talk about their process. Teach me how to do this product, or teach me how to run this part of the machine, or just walk me through it just so I can have a better understanding. And so for me, it's really just that deeper level understanding of a process, or deeper understanding of an improvement opportunity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sounds like you're also trying to really get at, when we talk about kind of respect for the people, mm-hmm. or better phrased, respect for humanity, like really mm-hmm. trying to understand how processes impact people, right? Because at the end of the day, it's somebody out there, right?
Exactly.
Dealing with this.
Exactly. When I stood in front of this organization, when I first started, I asked for an opportunity at one of our meetings. We're still, we're a $750 million company, but we still operate here locally, mostly with about 40 or 50 people locally. Mm-hmm. So to be able to, I asked for some time to get in front of everybody. I wanted to talk about what this is, what our journey is, and how it's going to, we're going to do it our way. And one of the elements, it just honestly was just kind of, we're gonna look at it from just, I want to understand you, I want to understand the business, the way it works today, and but to be able to stand there in front of them and just, we're going to do it our way. I wanted to make sure that the message was very clear and succinct.
So what happens when, and I don't know if you have this at Zeeland, but I mean, many folks have this situation where we approach a continuous improvement effort or movement or mm-hmm. whatever with an organization, and from time to time you come across someone who's maybe they're sitting in the back row of the room, they got their mm-hmm. arms crossed, they don't necessarily look like they are excited to be there, and sometimes they're even downright hostile,
for sure.
So what tool is that? How do you balance empathy with the need to survive,
yes.
once in a while?
No, you're right. Absolutely right. And there's several instances, in my past where I can think of coming across that, and adding to that, the fact that, being a kind of a millennial, if you will, mm-hmm. Added to that, some of that, honestly, some of that initial challenge. But I have a great quote that I use quite often, whether it's in a presentation, I put it on LinkedIn, but I use it often. And I know that on your show in the past you've done that, but for me it comes from Alan Watts, who was a British philosopher, and he said, he talked a lot about, he said, if a person believes the earth's flat and you can't talk them out of it, then know it's flat. They look out the window, look, it looks flat, you can see it. The only way to convince them is to say, let's go find the edge. And so you start walking, and you walk in a perfect straight line, and you go around the world. When you come back to where you started, then you'll have convinced them. And I think there's been times in my career so far, even where I've had to do that, where I've had to ask for trust. I've had to ask for, let me show you. And whether that's, literal of, let me just go out and help you do the work and show you the value, or whether that means I'm going to help you create this business case, or I'm going to help show you the opportunity that's out there, but just asking for that trust. Let me show it to you. Give me that opportunity.
The only problem with that experiment might be you're walking and all of a sudden you walk off a cliff and the dude's going, "I told you."
Yep, exactly. Make sure you have your parachute.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Climbing gear, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, the road is very.
No, that's great. I love that. That's a great quote, though. That's a great quote. Hey, so last question for this section, Brian, is I've seen from time to time that you use a tagline. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And you don't see this tagline a lot with the tough lean thinkers out here, you know. But the tagline is "Spread the lean love." So talk a little bit about the what does it mean? What's the significance? And what's it mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Sure. A lot of this really started. I think it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago now. I had just taken a role with Hayworth, and I had an opportunity to co-lead with a lady over at the Holland Rescue Mission. So it's a local, not for profit organization that works with, people that struggle with chronic homelessness, different, life issues. It kind of helps people get back on their feet. And we did an event together that was they take in donations of clothing and anything you want to donate, but just taking in donations, sorting through them, and getting it out to their thrift stores, which really supported their operation. And so it was a week-long event. In the true empathetic form, I went out and worked on the clothes sorting line with them, we joked about it, and I still even joke about it to this day with them, but I'm allergic to cat hair, and we opened up this big old Gaylord, which is a big 4 foot by 4 foot box of clothes, and there's just all sorts of stuff, and I'm sneezing, my eyes are watering, but I'm out there working with them. I'm just understanding their process and what they go through every day. And we created a week-long Kaizen event and did training up front with a paper airplane simulation, and kind of trained the folks there. But to see them, the folks there go from day one, why am I here? What am I doing? I'm never going to be able to understand this, to the last day, watching them go out to the floor and walk through the improvements on the board with their leadership in the room. And then to have one of them come up to me afterwards and say, I didn't know I could think like that. I feel so much smarter. And to be able to kind of really make that connection of you've had this, but we've given them a tool to to bring that out. And that event in itself was kind of the start of that there's a deeper purpose, that there's a bigger meaning to what we do as lean practitioners. And even in a work environment, the things that we do make people happier. They don't have to deal with the same stuff that they've always had to deal with. We develop their way of thinking to begin to challenge status quos and be able to change the way that they work and go home and live happier lives because of it. And that event really started it. And I continue my partnership with them. We started to develop their lean curriculum to continue to work through that, and how it really fits into their greater organization, and how it fits into for their students that are going to be going out into the work world again. And but it really is it goes beyond just the work results. It's that deeper purpose. It's creating happy people through what we do. And that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. It's so crazy when I remember it was probably 10 years or so ago. There was here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's a shelter for battered women and their children, and they had the exact same deal where people donate clothes. So I remember I went over there to help them for a few days, kind of pro bono type thing, and we walked into this room, and there was this mountain of garbage bags just packed to the ceiling, and I'm like, goodness gracious, So we did a little 5S, and but there's so many examples, and I think if everyone listening to this right now, went out into their local, like neighborhood or city or whatever it is, I promise you there's some shelter there with bags packed to the ceiling, and they would love a little support, and I think, like you said, spread the lean love, if you will.
Exactly.
That's
and what that's done. I just was there a couple weeks ago, and to see the continued, just from that one event, and then the continued partnership, and the skills that have been developed throughout their organization, and just to see the changes in what they've done, it really shows the power of what what one small event can do.
Yeah.
And just like you said, you walked in, there's just stuff everywhere. That kind of made us think, well, we can help, and partnership from there. It's pretty amazing what it can do. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. All right, Brian. Well, hey, let's go ahead and transition into the reflection section. I got a couple questions I want to run
Sure.
past you. Talk about, you've been on this journey for a little bit, even, for even from before Zeeland there. But I'm thinking into the future. Where do you think Lean is going?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I really see the people side becoming a bigger component. Just all the stuff up front of what you do to really involve the person, to involve the individual. And you see different models out there. The Shingo model is becoming very popular from Kata, where it's coaching. But you look at all those pieces, and what's making them successful is that personal connection and building the trust and rapport. And I think as we move forward, and as generations change, and as organizations change, and as I really always think that every day organizations and leadership are being held to higher standards, and the more and more we can incorporate empathy and really the people side of things, I think I really see the business moving in that direction. I see the businesses who are really successful are building the culture, and they're building it around people, and those who don't, some are successful and others aren't. So I see it really transitioning to what are we doing for our people? How are we helping them help themselves?
So if you think back to the nonprofit work that you were just describing, and those folks that you were dealing with, and I'm using them as just an example, so you can speak generally speaking. It doesn't have to be just them. But where do you think most people struggle with Lean? Is it? And I'll give you 3 high-level ideas. First one being kind of the content, theory, philosophy. The second one could be maybe the deployment, implementation, like what to do and when to do it. And then maybe last one could be like who should do it, and those two are kind of similar, I guess. But where do you see people struggling the most?
Yeah. I guess for me, initially, what really pops into my head immediately is just, I think oftentimes we get bogged down in the thought of, I need it to look like this company, or I need it to look like that, or, I've worked here and that's how we did it, so that we want it to look like this. I think organizations really get stuck sometimes in doing it a certain way because others have been successful doing it that way. When I got in front of this organization, I said, one of the key takeaways was we were going to do it our way, and we're going to learn from others. And I think that's absolutely important to benchmark, to know what's out there, how others have handled challenges that we may handle. But it's important to also understand your own organization, understand your own people, your own processes, and just know what you do it your way. Just like a self-diagnosis on the internet, it might give you some guidance, but you probably should see a professional to get your own unique understanding of what's going on with you. Same thing with a business. I think it's important for organizations to really look at themselves and do what's right for them, not just because others have done it. Learn from those things, but then also develop it your own way. Then it gives you the ownership, and it's your product. It's what you've developed. So I think that for me, initially, my thought is what pops into my head.
Got it. Is there an area of continuous improvement, Lean, whatever you want to call it, that you struggle with, or maybe you wonder, does this really work?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think for me, it's sometimes I guess it's difficult to kind of talk about it, but I guess it's how stringent sometimes things can get. I love standardization, and I love things to be the exact same. But there's a song by Depeche Mode, and they say, people are people. And it's that, to me, there's certain things we have to change. One of the things that I came into was the thoughts of, it always has to be pen and pencil. I've grown up with a cell phone, or a tablet. I have all these different items that I interact with data differently than others. So I think sometimes that's a bit of a struggle, even for the thought of how we interact with data. And you've got your lean management boards that are pen and pencil, and creating automated ones, and then there's the arguments. So it's just a funny thing that's out there, and I don't know if one's better than the other, but it's just that I guess that's the one little piece of it. But I love everything about it. So it's difficult to pinpoint anything crazy.
So I'm gonna debut a brand new reflection question I've never asked anybody before, and it's maybe it's looking at the glass half empty kind of thing. But sometimes I ask people, "What's the best advice you've ever received?" And it's always Grandma gave me some amazing wisdom back when I was 8. But I'm gonna flip it around. Can you think of any terrible advice you've ever received? You don't have to name who gave it to you, obviously. Yes. But
right. This sounds wild and crazy, but at one point in my past life, my past career, I had somebody tell me when I first started this job, it wasn't CI, it was in the golf business, but I remember sitting down, and day one, I was told what you need to do is go out and assert yourself, and don't be their friend, don't be nice, go out and just be difficult, be strong-headed, and then dial back from there. And I just thought, gosh, that just does not seem like a good idea. I didn't follow that. And the crew itself is still very successful that way. But just that advice to me always kind of thought, what? That just seems completely backwards from what I would do. And that was early on in my management career. So I just kind of thought, is that really what I've got to do?
Wow.
Yeah, so no, I did not follow that advice, and I'm glad I didn't.
That's good. All right, good stuff. All right, well, hey, Brian, it's been great chatting with you. Let's go ahead and wrap things up.
Okay.
Give some final words of wisdom to the folks listening, and then definitely tell everyone how they can best connect with you.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing, the big takeaway for me is to really begin to take a look at the approach that you take. Where you struggle, if it's in sustainment, look to the root cause. Potentially it's the stuff being done up front. We can do all sorts of things from standard work and audits, and different items like that, where we can try the sustainment, 30, 60, 90-day checks, but really look up front and see how, have you built the trust? Have you built the rapport? Have you really brought the individual into it? And then, for me, there's plenty more stuff to talk about, and actual different tools and concepts that we'll use here locally. But yeah, for sure, can connect with me. Like you said, Spread the Lean Love. I've got my website, spreadtheleanlove.com. I've got spreadtheleanlove@gmail.com if they want to email me, and same thing on LinkedIn. And I'll provide links for those as well. Because I just love to talk about this stuff, and looking forward. Certainly not a full-time consultant or anything like that. Obviously, I have my day job here, so it's just a matter of more just passion, sharing really what we can do to kind of make work lives and regular life better. So I appreciate you having me on the show today, and look forward to maybe sharing more in the future, and maybe some more specific tools or systems that we use. But really excited to be able to share kind of the general overview of the approach, and we've been very successful to this point.
Fantastic. All right, Brian. Well, thanks again, and keep up the good work, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Gemba Academy podcast. Now, we invite you to take a no-strings-attached, fully functional test drive of GembaAcademy.com. Gain immediate access to more than 1,000 Lean and Six Sigma learning resources, all free of charge, at GembaAcademy.com.